Alright, we back. Another video on my trade setup here. This is, I think, I say this in a lot of videos. If you've seen a lot of my videos, I say this. I think this is my final version. But I think this is actually it. I'm pretty sure. There's not much more I want to add to it. I'm going to go over it for you just to show you quick and dirty how it works. First off, first thing we have are the daily pivot points. I'm going to turn everything off. Then I'll go in and show you guys how to set it up. Alright. So first, you might change your candlesticks to Heikin-Ashi. I mean, I don't recommend using regular candlesticks at any point in time. You might use Heikin-Ashi, you might use Renko. That's really about it. The reason you do that is just to smooth out your price action. If you use candles are okay, but they're just way more choppy. They don't give you any indication of the trend. This is built-in indication of the trend, so this is what we want. Also, using the Heikin-Ashi, all these other indicators are going to be based on the close of this candle, each candle. And so your pivot points will be different, your RSI is going to be different, your other pivot points are going to be different based on the close of each candle. So it's just a smoother way to base all your indicators. Okay, so moving on. So you got the daily. The reason you want the daily is because you want to know the time frame, because every day has like a move, right? Every day is going to either be buy the dip or sell the rip, or it's going to be sideways. So if you're day trading, what you want to know is today going to be a buy the dip opportunity or sell the rip opportunity? But in this case, I'm trading cryptos. So really just looking to buy the dips in cryptos. I don't short the crypts. So moving on. So now we got our time frame here. So for example, coming in this rip right here, I sold this here mainly because we're coming into the end of the day. So because I could see this from an historical standpoint, I could see that a new day was starting here. It starts every day at 7 p.m. Central. I know that there's going to be end of the day profit takers. So since I'm day trading, let's just sell the rip. Let's just wait for the next day to start, and we'll see what happens. So we let the next day start. Okay, so now we're in a new day here. Okay, now we add in our weekly pivots. So those are these yellow lines. And these are all based on traditional pivots here. And this is the pivot point standard. Right here, you just type in pivot point standard, and you can adjust it however you want to. I just keep it on traditional, and then you've got your auto. If you just want to have one on there, it'll adjust to the time frame, or daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and then just color code them normally. So my daily levels are always going to be orange, my weekly levels are always going to be yellow. That's just how I do it. So there's my weekly pivot points. So now if you're trading on a weekly basis, or if you're coming into a weekly level, then that's going to be a time to start paying attention, because as you see, as we come into the day, we had this nice little fade, this little drawdown into the weekly and the daily. But notice the daily pivot is above the weekly, so this is a sign of strength here. This is a sign of possible dip buy here. We'll need some more confirmation before we decide to buy that. So next level is going to be our monthly level. So we have the white. This is going to be the monthly mid level. And then we have our monthly levels. So this is going to be our longer term levels, or they'll be bigger as we come closer to them. So you can see this, if we ever hit up here, this 0.67 is going to be a pretty big deal. And so you see that. Next is your monthly level or your yearly levels. On Dogecoin, the yearly levels are kind of combobulated because it broke out this year. So these are the original yearly levels. And you can see that it's based off of last year. Last year was all sideways, pretty much. So they've got really, really tight levels that are calculated for this year. But you can go into like Eth or something, you'll see that we're above all the yearly levels there. What about Bitcoin? So Bitcoin is actually inside of the yearly levels. So he's got a yearly there, a yearly there. So I color coded the yearly split. All right, so that's a quick and dirty overview of the pivot points and how I use them. So I'm just using them really to gauge relative strength of the the asset you're trading, for example. So your pivot points are going to be key. These they're minor levels and major levels. So minor would be your dailies and weeklies. Major would be your monthly, yearlies. So now you got some reference points that are automatically printed whenever you look at the chart. That way you don't need to spend too much time develop, because if you're trading weekly options like me, or if you're doing day trades and stuff, you don't want to spend a whole lot of time like trying to look at the entire chart. Now you can gain some perspective like on a daily, like quick go daily, just see what's happening. And that's one thing I do. I don't like to trade, like if I'm buying the dip, like I want to see a green week, I want to see a green day, and then you come in here under the 15-minute, and okay, so we're positive. I mean, this thing is going up. So buy the dip is probably the best. Your best bet to buy the dip. Your number one thing in trading is to try and get really good execution. So buying the dip at a good point is probably your best bet. You don't want to give up a lot of slippage in your trade. If you're buying the dip and you're right, but you still had to give up, like, say you had to give up like 6 or 7 points just to gain like 6 or 7 points, well, that's not a very good risk reward. You should probably work on your timing and execution. And so that's the whole point of this, is just to give me a little bit better idea of where the best possible trade is on that time frame. Okay, so those are pivots. And then I have like this previous levels indicator. Not really an indicator, it's just going to print off previous weekly levels here. It's previous period levels by JayRogers. And so you can come in here, and what I like about it is we're going to show our previous week, and it's going to show the open, the high, the low, the close, the high and low divided by 2, the high and low close divided by 3, and the open, high, low, close divided by 4. So these are going to give us some interesting little mini weekly levels that are going to be showing up in here that we can play off of as well. And those are these dotted lines. So I color coded those yellow, and you can see that we had a weekly pivot and we've got weekly levels coming in right here on Doge. So this is what I'm looking at buying Doge here, because I'm going to go through kind of the analysis here, but we broke out of those levels, and then we started the day, and we're kind of fading back into the breakout. And so now we add in the volume profile, session volume, and the reason you use this session volume and not this one is because you can extend this point of control. You can extend that out, and the reason that's important, and if anybody finds this stuff interesting, is because the point of control, I've noticed, for the day, for each day, tends to get revisited, tends to, and I'm going to show you a chart that it has not done that yet, but it tends to, in most cases, eventually get tapped. And so I'll show you what I mean here. We'll go back on Doge here. So here's our point of control for the 12th on Doge, and it got extended out, and then we had a huge dive the next day, and then a rip right back to that point of control, and then it sold off again. But then we ripped up. So what happens is I noticed is it at least gets touched, and then it is typically a pause once that point of control gets hit. Typically a pause, and then that point of control is no longer an issue. For example, it's gone. Like, that's why it disappears. So now once it's gone, once they hit that, they dip it, and then they can rip it through. So that's why I marked this, because I figured at some point this point of control from this day, it hasn't been visited yet. They haven't quite brought it down enough to see that. But if I see that, I want to be notified, because I want to know, where it's at. I'll look at some of the other indicators and stuff. Is that going to be a good buy right there? Very interesting to see. So that's your volume profile for the day, the session volume. So what's interesting is you can use these if you color code this volume profile correctly. Like I just have. I just want the up volume, and then the down volume here is gray, and then the rest is the value area is what's important. So your value area is this area right here. So you've got, let's not extend that, 70% of the volume is in this value area. So that's why this color coded like that. And then outside of that would be considered like excess, like an excess high or an excess low. And so what I'm looking for is excess lows. If I'm trying to buy the dip, I'm looking for these situations right here where volume gets super thin on the low. Volume gets super thin on the low at major support. So I was buying here this morning. I woke up this morning, I saw this dipping right in here. This is kind of what I was hoping for. So I'm buying on the way down here into this support. Bought a little here, bought a little here, bought a little bit more here. So I scaled my buy small, small, and then I went a little bit bigger here into this low, because I just imagine this is probably just stops and stuff being taken out. That's my initial thesis here. So anyways, I'm buying this low. So you don't really need much more indicators than just levels in this volume profile. And this is just I'm going to take this off. No, I'm not going to take this off. This is just an anchored VWAP, if you guys know anything about anchored VWAP. This was just, I did an anchored VWAP from the open, high, low, close divided by 4 of the high of the highest candle of yesterday. So I figure that's going to be kind of like this dynamic resistance. It's going to give you an idea of, I can kind of see, it's kind of getting back up into that zone. This is going to pop it. If it hits this level here, it's going to pop it. I'll probably start looking to scale out as we start getting up into these levels here. So, all right, next. The strength, relative strength, you can actually put that into TradingView. Relative strength to Bitcoin, or relative strength, you can change this to SPY. So if you're trading equities, you just come in here and change this to SPY. I put it on a 48 length because 48 is going to be, on a 15-minute chart, is just going to be a rolling 6 hours, I believe. Pretty sure, but that's the idea. I just wanted kind of a rolling 6 hours of relative strength, because if you're day trading, I'm taking a fourth of the day and comparing it to I'm taking a fourth of the day comparing it to another fourth of the day. So it's just constantly rolling over, and that way I can get a good idea of Dogecoin's performance versus Bitcoin, and it's going to give you nice little, okay, right now Dogecoin's outperforming, but you had this like again, you had like I can't draw on here, but obviously you can see a negative divergence coming in here at the end of the day, just because it's the end of the day. So if you wanted to short, you could have shorted there, you could have just taken your profits there, but it's going to give you some more indications on what's happening. And then what I did was I actually added in this RSI and a moving average. So I'll show you what I mean here. RSI, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I have noticed, I've found a way that I like using it. And what you can do is come in here with RSI, and you can, for one, I did the 48 again. So we're doing a rolling 6 hour, gosh darn it, is that 6 hours? I'm just doing the math here. It's 12 hours, excuse me. 48 period on a 15 is 12 hours. So I'm doing a rolling 12-hour RSI. So each print here is going to be compared to 12 hours ago, or 48 bars ago. So I want to see the relative strength compared to 48 bars on a rolling basis. Then you can come in here and hit this little 3-bar and then add indicator on strategy. You can add a moving average on here. The only reason you add the moving average, obviously there is a purpose to that, is you want to gauge. I think I want this moved up. There we go. You want to just gauge the moving average. You want to smooth this RSI out a little bit. So I just did a moving average of the 24. So this is a rolling 6 hour moving average of the RSI. All right. So now we're getting into where we have decent indications of move. An intraday move is what we care about. So we have buying, we have support. We're buying into support, big support. We have pivot and weekly there into an excess low. So we're buying as the selling gets weaker and weaker. And now we have a RSI that's crossed up, and we have outperformance in Bitcoin happening as well. And then let's look at our intra-bar volume, which is basically, you can just come in here and find this intra-bar volume profile, intra-bar. Okay, this is going to give you the volume inside each bar, buying and selling versus buying and selling. So you can see where it lines up with the underperformance to Bitcoin. So underperformance to Bitcoin, selling, selling, selling. But you can see each sell gets a little weaker as we're getting into this support. All right, so this is what we want. We want to know where are the sellers the weakest. And this is what we're trying to get an indication of. So we have our price action here, and we got the 50 level for the RSI, which is all I really care about. I really only care about this being above the red, and then this being above the 50. I don't care, if it's overbought, then I start considering, okay, maybe it's time to get out and stuff. But and then we also want to see volume coming in, buy volume coming in. So we have a nice little signal here that all lines up, where we have outperformance to Bitcoin happening, volume, and we have the RSI crossing up. Not only that, we had weaker sells into support, into excess lows, into big pivot points. And so so I was buying here a little bit, just a little bit there, and then I put in a lot more right there. As this, because I don't know where the bottom actually is. You're seeing these excess lows. This profile starts out really small in the opening part of the day, so I'm not going to go big until I can see some real volume coming in. But this has been pretty nice. I've been using this for a couple days, and it's been pretty sweet. Let's just go look at it. You can use the relative to Bitcoin on anything really. And it's pretty solid as far as an indicator. So looking at SPY here, SPY came in relatively high on this RSI, which I really liked. I liked this being up here in the upper quadrant here. But you can see that it's relative to Bitcoin was still underperformed here. But that's not that big of a deal if you're comparing an equity to Bitcoin. It's not that big of a deal. So you really don't even need that. But you had really good volume coming in, and then you had us opening up over the previous. We actually opened up over the previous day levels, and so this is already going to be major support. I actually notated that with my own line because I was just like, okay, well, this is going to be huge. If we don't go underneath here, then there's nowhere else to go but higher, essentially. So. And all you had was just kind of this weekly level here and a daily pivot. There wasn't much resistance until you got up into this area here. So you had some more weekly levels and you had the weekly pivot. So here's another thing to think about though. So we have these weekly pivots pretty much every day except for Monday, which basically Monday went straight down. Every day was up underneath. So here's another way you can look at this. Every day was up underneath that pivot level in between the monthly. So you can see opened up, basically all day sold, got right underneath that weekly pivot, and basically stayed there the rest of the week, even though we ripped. And the only time we bounced was on this monthly pivot line. And so if we track this, you're just basically either out cash or your inputs, and you can see where this is kind of trying to catch this bottom here. But it didn't even really matter that much. For Tuesday. Tuesday was just a cut day, and then we see some more selling into major support. So here's where you're looking to buy. This is where you'd want to be looking. And another thing too, once you start using these volume profiles, you start getting an idea of the shape. The shape of them tends to give you an indication of what's happening. For example, bottom heavy profile where you got most of the volume happening at the lows is actually bullish, meaning that there was passive buying there, and just buyers in general were buying the dip. Whereas in general, now this is just a very soft indicator for me, but in general, a top heavy day is going to be a sell for me in general. I'm going to be leaning bearish because look at the profiles here for this one. This would have been like, okay, we got this excess low here where it punctured our weekly level, and then they bought it up a little bit. But we had this profile here where it was top heavy. 70% of the volume happened basically at the open. So nothing happened here. It was just continuation, and then you see where it happened, where it sold off really hard and then got bought up. Yeah, they gapped it down a little bit right into that monthly, but then from then on it was off to the races. And so now we got another top heavy here, which made me a little nervous. But I was like, if they gap it over this this indication here, then that's going to be invalidated. And so the only reason I was nervous because I saw this and retail sales were happening. So I was like, well, if they react bad to retail sales, I'll know it's going to be a down day. But they opened it up over the pivot and they opened it up over that profile, meaning it just went higher. So another thing too to look at is look at your weekly profile here as well, and that way you can keep a little perspective. That's why I like these monthly and yearly pivots on here, because it keeps me you want to have some context when you're looking at something. Okay, so let's look at Tesla real quick. Trading Tesla was kind of a pain for the most part. You came into the week up underneath this pivot. So here's just how you use this. Again, you had 100% of action happening underneath the pivot. And let's see where the monthly is. It's actually under the monthly too. So you had the monthly pivot and the weekly pivot. So you already know that Tesla's pretty weak. And so if you're looking to buy calls, at least on a weekly basis, which is my whole goal for setting this up, was just to set it up to play weeklies. I'm not looking to buy calls on this in general. I'm really only looking for opportunities to short it, and or just not trade it in general, because this thing can really chop you up, as you can see here. So I'm not liking Tesla just based on this. So I did play Tesla a couple times here at the start of the week, but I didn't mess around with it the rest of the time. Okay, so let's look at Facebook. Facebook had a nice same thing, 100% of the volume underneath the pivot. Let's see, anything else? Allstate. So let's look at the performance of things that are under the pivot versus things that are above our pivot points here. We have a weekly pivot that's above the monthly, and then we have price action opening up over the weekly pivot. So we're already looking long for Allstate. Allstate had a great couple of days here. So you're looking to buy dips on this thing. You can come in here and just see. This is relative to Bitcoin, but had a nice day here. Took a little dip, but you've got, it's still way up here, so any dip could be bought. And then you had a nice ramp into the close, essentially. So I don't know. You guys tell me if you like this or not. I'm kind of rambled here, but if you want me to do a more detailed analysis of it, by all means I will. Hopefully this... I'm just throwing out these different setups. This is kind of the one I'm using right now. And if you're going to do... You don't have to copy this, obviously, but if you're going to do... Just get one piece of advice. If you're going to do an indicator or set up a system or whatever, always make sure you know exactly what you're trading. If you're going to do swing trading where you're trying to hold stuff for long term, you have to set up your indicators specifically for that, and that's the only thing you use it for. If you're going to trade weekly options, you got to have a system set up for weekly options specifically. Don't be trying to use your swing trading system for weekly options, because that's just a recipe for disaster in most cases. So anyways, again, if you guys want me to do a detailed deal of this, let me know. If not, whatever. Thanks. Bye.